He's Howard Eibach, former copywriter and creative director and the author of 2 books on the creative brief.
And he's Henry Gomez, an ad agency strategist with 27 years of experience. Together, he and I are the Brief Brothers. We love talking about creative briefs, briefing, and advertising. Henry, we're back, and today we have an old friend of mine. He was a former direct report when I was working in the business in Minneapolis. His name is Bob Harrison. He'll tell us a little bit more about himself. Let's join the conversation. All right, we're back with another episode, Henry, and I'm really happy, delighted to have as our guest Bob Harrison, who is an old friend. He's coming to us from Alabama. What's your city again, Bob?
Birmingham,
Alabama.
Birmingham, Alabama. I've known Bob for many years. He was a direct report when I was a creative director at Carlson Marketing Group, an agency now defunct, gone bye-bye. Bob was a very talented copywriter. And the fact that he's agreed to be on the show means I didn't screw up his career too much. He's still willing to talk to me.
Not at all. I recall we did some really fun, great work for both Northwest Airlines, which
British Airways.
And British Airways, yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So anyway, Bob, welcome to the Brief Brothers. Henry and I are really excited to have you on the show.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes. So, I've got so many things that I want to talk to you about. I'm going to start off with, and the creative brief will be, Henry and I just love to talk about briefs. I'm sure we'll get around to that. But as I was scoping through the Luckie website, I was
Luckie being his agency.
Luckie is his agency, and it's Luckie, which is the name of the founder.
Yes.
And you have a nice,
Luckie.
fun play on the word you're talking about, luck and relationship, to the your work on brands. So before we dive in and talk too much about, you and where you are and what's going on, tell us about this great agency you work for. And eventually we're going to talk about some major awards that you've won. But let's start out. Tell us about Luckie. What are some of the clients that you work for and what are you doing down there?
Oh, yeah. Well, I hope it's not too noisy here. But
it sounds good.
Luckie Company we're celebrating our 70th anniversary. We are a creative agency informed and driven by data primarily. But make no mistake, we're still a creative agency. Data does not equal boring. So say that right away. We have offices in Birmingham, Alabama, and in Atlanta, Georgia. And a few work from home folks kind of scattered across the country. I have been here, believe it or not, for going on 16 years. It'll be 16 years this March.
That's great.
And I'm a creative director and writer here. Some of our main clients are Regions Bank, which is a regional bank in 16 states. Our footprint is primarily in the Southeast,
including Florida, where I'm at.
Yeah. So are you familiar with? Have you seen some Regions?
Absolutely.
Okay. Cool.
Used to be Union Planters Bank.
A long time ago. Yes, absolutely. Little Debbie snack cakes.
Moon
Which
pies.
Yeah. Well, actually, oatmeal cream pies.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't make
those are good too. I like them.
Yeah.
I like them.
And let's see. We just came off of a bit of a new business spree, and we're representing as digital AOR a growing quick service restaurant called Jack's. Very much a cool Southern brand. Oh goodness, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Alabama, and a good number of others. So
you have not picked up an ounce of Alabama drawl, Bob. You must have been resisting.
Yeah. Well, I spent most of my life in the Midwest, so we're kind of accent neutral. Yeah. But take me out to a juke joint or something like that, and I might slip in a y'all.
Okay. All right. So would you say that Luckie is Describe Luckie's role or place among the ad agencies in Birmingham and in the South. Are you a regional shop? Do you have a national reach? You've got an office in Atlanta, so you've got a big reach.
We do have national clientele. We focus a lot on Southern brands, however, but that is not to say that we, you know, that we don't work with. We work with anybody, you know, really. So
Sure, sure.
yeah.
Well, I've noticed when I was looking at your website, you've been around for a long time. You have a good sized staff. I counted over 70 people on your staff, and the website may not reflect everyone, but that's the number of
Yes.
people I found. So
Yeah.
it's a good sized agency for Birmingham.
I'm not entirely sure what the exact head count is right now because there's new people here all the time. New faces.
That's great.
Yeah, it's good. So you know, I feel like we're growing and we're always adding talented people. So we might be above 100 right now.
Okay, well, that's great.
Might be, yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to make sure we had a chance to talk about was the stellar performance you and your colleagues did last 2021 for work that you had been doing in 2020 for one of your clients that won a gold and a silver can line at Cannes. So tell us more about that. That must have been just thrilling.
Yeah, well, we were over the moon about it. When that happened, I mean, getting the recognition was phenomenal, but I think the most gratifying thing about it was the fact that we created this not from a client ask or anything, but just to help people. Our client, Bridge Senior Living, as the realities of the pandemic began to set in, it became necessary for the residents to essentially be isolated in their apartments with minimal contact to staff, certainly no visitors, and nobody knew how long this was going to go on when it happened. And one of our strategists and a few other people over the weekend, when this was really starting to go on, we're just asking themselves, what can we do to help? And they came up with the idea that since they were isolated and since they could have no, you know, contact with each other, was there a way that they wouldn't feel so isolated? What could we do to do that? And the idea came about that this was a generation that really came up on radio, and what if we created kind of a pirate internet radio station where the residents were the DJs and they would play the music that they loved, and be able to give dedications to family and friends and to other residents across, you know, these facilities. I think at the time Bridge had 6 or 7 different actual senior living communities that were under their umbrella. And so we assembled a team of an intrepid writer who and a producer who called in to these residents and kind of gave them ideas about what to say and do in their radio program. But the residents themselves recorded their shows and set up the playlists, and oh my gosh, they were hilarious. Like, you know, they're like they came up with their own DJ handles. You know, some of them were really insane. Like one of them was DJ Boopsy, which just was crazy. And you wouldn't believe the music they played. Like there was this one gentleman, he must have been 90, but he loved Pink Floyd. So they were the shows themselves were really super surprising. I think the archive of the shows is now maybe going to the Library of Congress or something like that, if I've heard correctly. Yeah, I mean, it got a lot of attention. Dolly Parton participated. She gave Radio Recliner a shout out. We were on what's that morning show? Kelly and the other guy, I don't know.
It used to be Regis and
It was Ryan Seacrest. And so, you know, the recognition at Cannes was phenomenal. I mean, we were all super happy about it. Of course, we couldn't go because the pandemic shut it down.
Okay, now, before you get too involved in the story, tell us about what was it called again? What's the name of this radio station?
Recliner. And that was pretty much my contribution to the project. They were like, hey, we need a name for this thing. And I, you know, just being a wiseacre.
It's a good contribution.
Probably shouting out from the back of the room. How about Radio Recliner? Sold.
Okay, so now the genesis of this sounds like, because it wasn't this conglomeration of assisted living facilities coming to you and saying, we need X, Y, and Z. It was your idea.
Yeah.
Was there a brief?
Nope.
I didn't think so. I didn't think so. Right. But was there an organizing idea? Since the person who really drove we've got to do something was on our strategy team. Right.
So, you know, and I don't know why she didn't write a brief about it, but it was just like, it's one of those things, you know, time's of the essence, and we need to do something yesterday to help these people. So we sold it in with our client very, very quickly. They saw the good that could come out of it, not just from, you know, a PR and, you know, and kind of impressions, but because they really needed help.
And you had to submit probably a case study and sample creative to Cannes.
Yes.
To be considered.
Yes.
So you've got all that material, don't you?
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
So many seniors have been isolated in this pandemic and unable to have visitors.
If you don't want the roof blown off, don't turn your volume up, because Pink Floyd can take it off.
Pirate radio run by retirees.
Radio Recliner.
That's right, Radio Recliner.
The new online streaming radio station.
With retirees as DJs.
Coming to you from room 3325. This is Karaoke Cowboy.
I'm DJ Legal.
Hattie with a attitude. Now my DJ name, Boomski.
And here is Happy by Pharrell Williams.
Stairway to Heaven.
Peggy Sue. When my husband sang that to me, he would just make my heart melt.
I'd like to dedicate this song to the doctors, nurses,
to my daughters, Amy and Terry, and the best grandchildren ever.
As soon as I heard his voice, I burst into tears.
This show helps him stay social.
Hey, I'd like to dedicate the song to my mom.
Hi, Granny. We love you.
Hi. I want to send a very special shout out to all the DJs in the Radio Recliner program.
Don't let this virus get you down.
The sun comes up every morning.
I feel that I have something to offer. I feel empowered.
They are reaching the beaches and rocking the docks.
An injection of hope that we all need these days.
Oh my gosh, this just makes me want to cry.
Music makes a difference.
I want to be a Radio Recliner.
This is Miss Fancy Pants. Thank you for listening, and I enjoyed the time with you.
I just wanted to, congratulate you because
Yes.
as I've our listeners already know, I mean, after 27 years toiling in this industry,
Oh, yeah.
I was part of a team that won a Lion a Can just this past summer.
Fantastic.
Except he got to go. He got to go
There
to
you
Cannes.
go. That's awesome.
I got to go and actually just received my trophy. The agency was generous enough to buy trophies for the people that were involved in the assignment. So it sits in a place of honor in the middle of my living room right now. So
I bet.
but so congratulations. I can definitely relate to the feeling of accomplishment for those people on your team who did it, with no idea of, where it would lead, just trying to help. And that's a phenomenal story. Congrats.
Yeah. I mean, we were over the moon about it when it happened. And our chief creative officer was certainly over the moon about it too, because he did the talk show rounds for a while. He's like, after that, he's like, okay, where's the next idea that's sending me to a talk show?
That's the challenge we have now is like, where's the next one? How do we get a gold?
Excellent.
You guys got a gold, so congrats. Ours was a silver.
Yeah, well, I've got cans. I've got cans too. They're cans of soup in my counter slate. So I'm just sitting here. I'm proud of both you guys. I'm proud of my partner, and I'm proud of you, Bob. One of the things that we share besides our account work, are a couple of projects that we worked on at Carlson Marketing was, I think you might remember, and I don't remember exactly how far into my tenure as creative director at Carlson I was, but I do recall at one point receiving a creative brief on a British Airways project where I caught one of the account folks cutting and pasting from the Marcom brief from the client and directly into our creative brief, word for word, literal word for word, without any thinking at all. And you remember our bosses were Lori Bedwell, who's gone on to some great things in Minneapolis, and Paul Rector, who I think he's still in the business in a leadership position. I don't know exactly where.
Good.
But I went into their offices, and I love to tell this story. As I said, is it possible that you would allow me to put together a training to help people understand how to write a creative brief? And before I got the words out of my mouth, before I got the question out of my mouth, they knew where I was going, and they said, yes, we know this is a problem. And I created a little, I don't know, it was a 2-hour, 1.5 hour little tutorial. I can't remember if you were sitting in on the room with it when I did that or not.
Not
but that's
entirely sure.
But that's the origin of my interest in the creative brief when this happened.
I think it's worked out for you too. So that's really good. Yeah.
It's not what I expected. It's the turn in my career that I didn't expect, but I'm having a great time. I've had a chance to meet Henry, to do this podcast, and to stay in touch with people like you, see what you're doing. And let me use that as a segue to talk about the brief. You talk about, you have strategists and you have, you've done some great work. What has been the role of the brief at your agency, and how has it worked out? And do you still get complaints from the creative department because the brief isn't good enough? Tell me about it.
It's our nature to gripe about these things, isn't it? I mean, it just is.
Yes.
But, I mean, in the 16 years that I've been here, the brief has definitely changed and evolved, and as people come and go, and you get a new head of strategy or something like that, people have their own ways of doing things. We've had briefs that were classic one-pagers, like not allowed to go over a page in the past. Those have been phenomenal. Our brief is probably, I would say currently has expanded from that, but I think
that's your gentle way of saying it's no longer a page.
It's no longer a page. It's no longer a page, but it is still fairly efficient, which I think is good. It's an interesting document. Again, with us, everything starts with data. Everything is the insights are drawn from things that are measurable. And from there, that's where the brief starts to get creative. I will say that I think our briefs are creative. They use this kind of format where the client ask is in there, and the things that we want to accomplish are in there. But in the end, that's kind of summed up in a few what we call truth and dares. So, a truth might be people don't trust big banks. The dare then, which is usually something very audacious, like, okay, truth, people don't trust large banks. The dare is to make them not only trust regions with their money, but make regions a resource for decisions they make about their lives that are not always, just financial ones. So that was the truth and dare that teed up our latest campaign, which is called Embrace the If in Life.
I think I saw some of that work. Was that the one that had the jingle that you posted on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Yes, and I noted that, and Henry and I have talked, I think, about this maybe once or twice, how there's a dearth of jingles in our business. No one wants to go that route anymore. It's almost like it's not sophisticated enough.
Well, my secret was that I called it a song.
You tricked him. You tricked him.
I tricked him.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. I wrote the music for that, and when I was pitching it to them, it really was like a scene out of one of those like movies about advertising or something like that happened in the 90s, where the creative guy pulls a guitar out from under the conference room table and says, what if it was a little something like this?
I think a clip we need to take, Henry, take note of this, and clip we need to take for this episode is we have to go onto the Luckie website and grab that little clip of Bob, because he's strumming his guitar, and I think he throws a pick. You throw a pick.
Yeah.
Each member of the staff gets about 4 or 5 second clip of doing something to indicate either a hobby or something to reflect their personality, which I think is a clever idea. And Bob has got his guitar out, so maybe we can grab that.
Some people aren't very clever about it though, and I'll put them on notice. Like, if what you do in your GIF is like just hold up a book because you like to read, you need
to put on a golf glove. put on a golf glove. And I won't name the name of the person who owns the agency who puts on the golf glove. I can diss him because I'm not in Birmingham. You can't touch me.
I said I think his was a stroke of genius though.
Well,
of course.
On the subject of jingles, I have an anecdote that you might find amusing.
Yeah.
I worked on the McDonald's account for 5 years. And one of the things that I got to do was I received a briefing from Keith Reinard, who had been the chief creative officer and chief executive officer of DDB after they merged with Needham Harper. And he had worked on McDonald's many years. And so I got to work with this guy, a living legend, and it was really nice. But then at the end of my 5 years on McDonald's, I got moved over to the State Farm business. And so I'm in Bloomington, Illinois, in the State Farm headquarters, waiting for them to come retrieve me from the lobby. Yeah. And I'm sitting there and I'm kind of looking at the stuff around the walls, and there's a piece of sheet music that's framed there. Yeah. And the sheet music says, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. It's a full jingle. And it says, music by Barry Manilow, lyrics by Keith Reinard.
Isn't that amazing? Barry Manilow wrote a bunch of them. I mean, he made his living off of it for a long time.
And I got a kick. Obviously, my parents, I listened to a lot of Barry Manilow because my parents listened to it when I was a kid. But then I saw it was Keith Reinard wrote the lyrics, and I was already in awe of Keith. And now it's like, oh wow, here's an advertising copywriter who, that jingle still today, you know,
Absolutely.
people recognize it, and it's a very rare piece of lasting creative,
Isn't
because
it though?
most of our stuff is here
It's
today.
pretty ephemeral. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, we talk about the number of brands that abandoned
Yeah.
either taglines or great
Jingles,
campaigns
all
or
kinds
jingles.
of brand assets that they've developed and spent tens, hundreds of millions of dollars searing into people's minds, and then a new agency comes and says, oh no, get rid of that, that's no good anymore.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the clients are dumb enough to say, oh yeah, that's old news, we gotta get rid of
I
that.
guess
Oh
I guess my favorite recent story, we talked about this a few episodes ago, Henry, was when I heard from we talked with someone who was Reed Holmes. It was Reed Holmes when I was working for Campbell Methune, and he came up with the whole we got people campaign for H&R Block. And when that moved to the agency in Chicago, when Campbell Methune lost the account, I think it was DDB in Chicago got the account. The mother of someone either at DDB or H&R Block down in Kansas City, who was a grade school, elementary school grammar teacher, said, no, we can't do that. We got people as bad grammar, and they killed it. Yeah. They killed it because we got people as just bad grammar, right? And someone's mother had that kind of influence.
Yeah.
You know,
It
you build
It
equity and stuff, something like that. And
then something stupid goes down like that.
But I don't want to forget, we were talking about this before I hit record, Bob, and I want you to go back and talk about the radio spot. You said you won a Mercury Award.
Yes.
For the radio spot. Tell us about the radio spot. And this, I'm going to assume, and this is for
this is for Radio Recliner again.
Radio Recliner. So I'm kind of backing up, but I wanted to have us tell about that.
Well, it's interesting because I wasn't even aware that this category existed. But Radio Recliner won a Mercury Award for simply best use of audio, which I think is really interesting. Because it wasn't any one thing we did. It was just the fact that the power of radio itself, and the good that Radio Recliner was able to do in a very trying time. They recognized it as just an outstanding use of audio.
So this whole concept of the individual, the residents creating their own show.
Yep.
Picking their song lists,
coming
up with the name, the Radio Recliner.
Yes,
I see.
That was
That's
it.
cool.
So
I mean, the Radio Mercury Awards, I think, they're in the business of recognizing anything related with radio and audio. And so in this case, I think they probably got excited about the fact that, this is kind of a new look at the power of audio.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Totally.
That's great.
When I joined the call before we were recording, you guys were talking, and I asked about radio because one of the things that I like to ask when I just had a group of students from Loyola University in Maryland visit us at the agency last week, and one of the spiels that I have in my canned speech is about, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I asked, what medium reaches the most adults in the United States on a weekly basis? And they never guessed correctly. And the answer is AM/FM radio.
Wow.
Reaches 88% of all adults in the US, according to Nielsen. And I say, and you're probably wondering about streaming audio on like a mobile device. I said, well, about 50% of adults listen to streaming audio. So if 9 out of 10 adults listen to radio, AM/FM radio, and 5 out of 10 adults listen to streaming audio, what does that tell you? And they look at me with a blank face. I say, it tells you that streaming audio didn't replace radio. It complements it. Like these people are listening to both.
Yeah.
And the fact that commercials on streaming audio sound a lot like commercials on radio. So what are we even talking about? What are we even talking about,
Yeah. Gosh, I have to say, I love radio. I don't get to do as much of it as I have in the past. And when I see, like books from students or, people who have just, or just trying to get into the business, I always love it when I see a writer's book that has some radio in it. I mean, it's a really good.
Well, it's a writer's medium for
It
sure.
really is. Yeah, absolutely. But I don't see it that often.
I was just going to say, I'll bet it's pretty rare.
I don't see it that often.
There's a ton of radio.
I flag the ones that are good. And let's face it, 99, I don't have the actual stat, but I'm going to claim that 99% of radio is unlistenable. Radio advertising. Yeah.
I think that's the percentage of the number of ads out there that are unwatchable or lookable or readable. It's just, most of us out there is crap, which makes the 1% or whatever the percentage is good. That's good, really good.
Tom Bodett for Motel 6. Real American Heroes for that became a TV. It
was better in radio. It was better in radio.
Yeah,
too.
it became
The
Real Men of Genius.
The Real Men of Genius.
It's what it morphed into after 9/11, and then it became TV. But it started out as a radio campaign. There was a campaign I remember from like my high school years, and it was like during the 80s and early 90s. It was for Comp USA. And they had these two characters, PC Modem and Bob. And PC Modem was like the nerdy guy, and Bob was the comedian. So PC Modem was the straight man. And they would have an on every week because it was retail, right? But they had always a joke. There was always some joke in there, and then they would say what the specials of the week were on sale at Comp USA. And I remember one of them. It was the guy says, "Well, that's the greatest thing I've heard since they found DB Cooper." And the other guy says, "They never found DB Cooper." He goes, "Well, then that's the greatest thing I ever heard."
Yeah.
So Bob,
that was a
been...
long running campaign. Yeah.
I was just going to mention last year I was kind of a preliminary judge for Radio Mercury Awards. And I think they have you rate the radio kind of on a scale from 1 to 10, and I think my job was definitely to be a gatekeeper, because the amount of submissions to the Radio Mercury Awards that I heard that were absolute garbage I was like, why are you submitting this? What are you thinking? Have you heard what wins this thing? Why would you, so I think out of the batch that I got, I maybe had a couple of 7s and 8s in the batch.
Maybe the entrance fees were low.
Maybe they were.
You know how much money these award shows make just from the entry fees alone.
Oh my gosh. Well, I remember wasn't there a time where Best in Show of Radio Mercury Awards, it actually came with a cash prize, and I think it was $100,000. So if you were the writer that pulled that thing down, you walked away with a nice check. I don't think they do that anymore. Yeah.
Probably not. No.
Yeah.
So in your 16 years at Luckie, Bob, you came down there as a creative director?
I came down here as a senior writer. I was at Carmichael Lynch there in Minneapolis.
Right.
After I left Carlson. I spent 3 years at Carmichael, working in their baby discipline of digital advertising at the time. That digital advertising when I was at Carmichael really was in its infancy. And as part of that, did some really cool work and projects and stuff like that. But I also, it was a little weird because the rest of the creative department, they were like, well, why don't you just take the print ad and here, resize it, make it a banner. Here, take this ad and make it digital. And we spent a lot of time explaining that the digital practice meant a lot more than that, and there was a lot more that could be done. So
Was that a tough sell? Was that a tough learning curve?
it was, I mean, you know, hey, look, lots of great creatives there at Carmichael. Amazing, right?
Mhm. Good job.
Yeah. But they were kings of print advertising. I mean, Kelly Awards out the yin yang when I was there. That was 2003 to 2006. And they just didn't quite understand yet what digital was going to become. But we did some cool work for Tractor Supply Company and a financial institution called A.G. Edwards. Don't think they're around anymore, but we created that nest egg campaign for A.G. Edwards, where your nest egg, your savings, your portfolio was embodied by, an actual egg that you had to protect and nurture and grow,
I think I remember some TV for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
From years ago. Yeah, I do remember that. People carrying around their.
Yep, carrying around their nest egg.
I remember that. Yeah.
Working out their nest egg. I created a banner for that campaign where there was a nest egg on a treadmill wearing a goofy, sweatband. And of course, on the treadmill, it was rolling, and somebody saw that in the agency, and that became part of a TV spot.
So I remember that one.
I guess in that way, I did have a part of a TV spot at Carmichael, but so when the opportunity came to move, and it was brought on by a number of things, freaking cold in Minneapolis. I'd been there.
It took you that long to figure it out.
It took me that long to figure it out. Well, it took me that long, and two little children that needed to be like bundled up for 10 minutes before you could even take them to a car. I wanted to work on everything, and so when I met with our creative director here at Luckie at the time, it was with the understanding that I'm going to work on everything. I'm going to work on digital and TV and radio, the whole thing. Whereas at Carmichael, I was kind of, put in a little silo. So that's why I came here. And they've been good on their word of what I could do.
Well, that's great. That's wonderful. And I remember when the announcement came through, I saw it on LinkedIn that you'd been promoted to creative director. I was like, way to go, Bob. I was really proud of you. So I guess the question I have is, because Henry and I haven't talked about this that much, except when Cameron Day came on our show a couple of times, because he's got a couple of books out.
Yeah.
That really are all about managing your career. It's a creative career. His first book is about, getting started. His second book is kind of the middle part of the career.
Yeah.
And the third book's coming out, which is going to be, as you become a more senior player.
How do you survive in advertising after 50?
Yeah, probably something like that. And you're kind of a case study, because you came down to Luckie as a senior copywriter, and then you were able to prove your mettle, and you got promoted. So what was that like, getting that job? How did you feel taking on the responsibility of being a creative director? And what have you learned being a creative director?
I guess I've been in this role for 6 years now or something like that. It's kind of an odd thing. I have a few people who report to me, and the managing of people is something that you definitely have to learn. And I'm not sure that that's my super strong point, but I love talking about creative, and I love helping people do the best work of their lives. That's really, my goal. Is anybody who comes here, I want them to really do work that they're proud of. And
that's one of my observations of working with creatives over almost 3 decades, is that there's a difference between a great creative and a great creative director.
Yeah,
there's no guarantee that a great creative is going to be. It's like the ball players, right? Like, being a great player like Michael Jordan doesn't mean he would be a great coach.
Right.
because it's a different skill set.
It is.
And
It is. So why the expectation that you
and frequently
people?
and frequently, like in the ball game analogy, the best coaches that were players usually were the scrappy players who had to like find every angle in order to compete. You know, they weren't necessarily the most talented guys, but they were the most cerebral guys that figured out how the game worked and how to get the edge. And so I see that there's an issue in our industry, right? Is you come out of ad school or out of college and you start out as an art director or a copywriter, and you work on that skill and get better at that trade and at that skill. But at some point you get handed this title of associate creative director and then creative director. And it's all about managing people, budgets, and timelines. And you haven't managed anybody other than just doing your work and coming up with ideas. So it's a weird, you're right. It's a weird expectation that you should just automatically, without any sort of management training or anything like that.
The analog that I always kind of pointed to was an art director, a creative director at Fallon, the great Bob Barry. You would know him. He did the much awarded Time magazine campaign, and he was a creative director at Fallon, of course, and at the time that was a really happening shop. But he was a creative director, but he had no direct reports. He was a creative director simply on the merit of he was a killer art director, you know. Now I think since that time he has started his own shop with some other people, and now, you know, he manages people and stuff like that. But he, for a long time, I don't think he was interested in doing the work, not, you know.
Well, that's a really good point, Bob, because one of the things I had to learn when I became a creative director was to let go of the work. I mean, I didn't let it go 100%, but I gave it up almost 90-95%. And let my creatives do the work. At least I think I did a good job of that.
Absolutely.
What was
I'm very much a working creative director. I write a lot of stuff.
Okay. So do you think your direct reports would say that you are good at letting go, or do you think they would feel that they're in competition with you?
I don't know. I'll have to talk to them about that. The next time I'm forced to give a performance review or something like that, maybe I'll ask them. No, I try to, you know, give constructive feedback, real feedback, you know. I could probably do better. Again, you know, I didn't really expect to have direct reports, but I love I love helping people improve their craft and again do work that they're proud of, you know.
Well, it says a lot about Luckie and the people that you report to, that they've given you direct reports. They have confidence in you, so you have to
just a couple.
Okay. Well, as you've climbed the ladder at Luckie, have you felt, or we started off this conversation, I was asking you about, you know, your attitude toward the quality of the briefs that you've seen over your career at Luckie. And you said quite rightly that creatives always complain. We love to complain about, you know, when we don't see a brief that we like.
And Henry talks of them is variable, you know. I mean, it really has been variable over time.
And Henry talks all the time. And I commend him for this, and I admire him for this, by the fact that he always is in conversation with his creative director when he's working on a draft. He never springs a brief on the creative department. It's a collaborative effort. Okay, hardly ever. Do you feel that you have that opportunity at Luckie to contribute to the brief?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We work very closely with our strategists. I mean, there are times when you know, you have less input in a brief just because of timing or something like that. But you know, we're very much team players here, and the strategists don't just drop a brief and run. run from the room.
Slide it under your door.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no doors
No.
in agencies
No.
anymore.
And I'm not
Yeah,
gonna,
really.
I'm not gonna. I was talking with one of our strategists who I partner with quite regularly here, and I was like, I'm not mentioning any names of you guys because I don't want anyone to know that you exist or that you're great, because I don't want them to poach you.
Okay.
So. So they'll remain unnamed, but no, we do a lot of working together and checking in, and a creative brief is a living, breathing thing, and it has room to evolve slightly too, as if it needs to.
Well, as I've said repeatedly, and Henry echoes this, the one most important element of the creative brief is not actually in the brief itself, and that's trust.
Yeah.
And Henry works really hard to build trust with his creatives, and it sounds like that's the kind of relationship that you have with your strategists.
Absolutely,
as well.
that's what our team is like here too, and we have several that are.
I was gonna add, you mentioned the agency you're at being data driven, and I would imagine that the role of a strategist is even more magnified in that sense, because they have to be kind of immersed in that data. I don't know that there's any expectation that creatives, I mean, they need to be told what the data means, what are the implications of it, and there's a bit of storytelling there, and I think that that's really one of the key attributes of a good strategist is to take these disparate data points and make them into a story that's compelling, from which ideas can spark.
Yeah, no, that team goes pretty deep too. I mean, we have kind of a business intelligence discipline with data specialists and analysts and things like that, who bring do the research, and then our strategists again mine those for insights that then drive what we do, and a lot of again, I think data's gotten kind of a bad rap from creatives a lot, and I get it, because there was a time where it felt like, in a world where everything's digital, there was some guy on LinkedIn, I can't remember what his name is, but his analogy was really, really cool to me. He was like, it used to be advertising, the big idea was like an atomic bomb, boom, going to war with an atomic bomb, and the big idea was just explosive and big, and it affected everybody. And now, in a age of banner ads and things like that, it's like you're going to battle with 10,000 pea shooters.
Interesting. I was about to say Daisy BB guns.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think attitudes toward that are changing now when they realize the power.
I think so.
Television is still and as Henry alluded to before, radio is still one of the biggest media to reach people, because that's where they go.
YouTube is probably the biggest worldwide television network in the world.
Yeah.
But we don't see it as that but it is. I mean, there's a lot of eyeballs, and the advertising on YouTube looks a hell of a lot like TV advertising. So
go figure. Yeah. So it's a little tangent to what we were talking about, Bob, but are you familiar with this new AI called Chat GPT?
Oh yeah, that's the thing that's going to take all our jobs, right? Yeah.
No,
it's not going to. But yeah,
I've been playing around with it the last couple of days, and I actually sent Henry. The only thing that was useful from what I could tell is it's like I said, give me some ideas for topics to talk about the creative brief, and it came up with 20. I said, okay, well, we talked about 16 of those ideas.
Yeah.
But there were four new ones. It's like, oh, well, I hadn't thought about that. I sent them to Henry. Maybe we'll do one or two of them.
Yeah.
But have you any thoughts about it? Have you used it?
I haven't really used it, but to me, like, so I think the only threat, I mean, and I'm not a futurist or anything like that. I think the only threat would be to the kind of writing that Well, just the bad writing. You
Yeah.
know,
It's pedestrian. The writing is
it is
pedestrian.
very pedestrian. It can do that. It can do it very well.
Mm-hmm.
It can do faster. It can do it faster than
It is
a
fast.
middling copywriter.
There
can.
will be clients who will fall for it.
Yeah.
If you're scrolling on Facebook now, like because I'm starting to get some ads related to, I guess they have me pegged for some sort of advertising creative person.
Yeah.
So I get different kinds of ads. And one of them I get is for AI written content for like blogs. And I'm like,
Sure.
I blogged for a long time because there was a subject matter that I was very passionate about. And I did it pretty intensely for about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And I didn't need content for the sake of having content. I wrote content because I was inspired to write content and people were interested in what I was writing and they were reading it. But I think there's this tendency, particularly in small businesses, maybe, and unsophisticated marketers, to get bamboozled into this. Well, I got to have content. I have to have a blog. I have to have this. I have to be generating Facebook. And it's like, you know what? It's better to put one Facebook post a month out that you wrote that says that's valuable to whoever reads it than to have 10,000 of them written that don't mean anything to anyone. Like,
this white noise,
Yeah.
I'm interested in maybe toying around with it to see if it could be like just like a thought starter, a friend of mine, again, on an ex boss of mine, posted kind of a defense of it, saying, think of it as your car is stuck in the snow and you just need somebody to rock you out so you get moving again. I think it can generate a lot of
certainly it could be a stimulus, right?
Absolutely.
You could ask it, why do people sing in the shower? And it's going to give you like 100 theories that it found online and give you like come up with some answer. And that might be the insight for your soap campaign of, why
it's going to dig. It has a capacity to dig into the internet far faster than you and I can do it.
Yeah.
And it may not give you actually the source, but it'll give you the information itself.
I've seen some interesting artwork generated by artificial intelligence, but again, the inputs, the inputs matter, and that's going to come from a human,
Right. The judging of whatever it is that we see produced by the bot will always be us.
Yeah.
So it can't exist independent of us, no matter what anyone complains.
Too bad we're becoming less and less able to judge things very well.
Yeah. Well, listen, Bob Harrison, creative director at Luckie Advertising in Birmingham, Alabama. Thank you for joining Henry and me on the Brief Brothers.
I had a great time, guys. Thank you so much.
Good stuff, Henry.
Good stuff, Howard.
He's Henry Gomez.
And he's Howard Eibach, and together we're the Brief Brothers. Till next time, bye-bye.